Hi, my name is Joel, and I'm a filmmaker, and I'm fundraising for an important documentary called Embraced. And the name comes from how I embrace my son, who is diagnosed with an FASD, the acronym for fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. FASD is reported to be 300% more prevalent than autism. And I think it's misunderstood and people aren't aware for a couple reasons. One is that 90% of our kids do not have a physical trait that you can look at to see a disability. The other is 85% of the time it's reported there's a misdiagnosis. That was the case for us multiple times. Things like autism, um, ADHD, a learning disorder, and the list goes on. So we have a pretty big task ahead of us to help bring understanding to this issue. And so there's never been a documentary done like this before to bring attention to this condition. And with the prevalence being so high, in one report, as high as 5% of our school children, using another scale that measures just prenatal alcohol exposure, it might be as high as 30% of our population. And so we've got a really big task ahead of us. However, it's a really critical and important documentary. And we hope that you spend some time listening to some of the interviews. Jody Culp, we've partnered up with her of Red Shoes Rocks to interview some individuals who are adults now that have an FASD to tell us about some of their challenges. In this next video, we're honored to introduce to you RJ. There you go. So what were some of the bigger challenges prior to understanding it? I want to circle back to how you apply what you've learned to, your strategies, but go back to your teenage years and young adult years and some of those kinds of things.
Oh, I had totally given up on society. I was often living on the streets, had a lot to do with drugs and things like that. Because I never had a lot of friends. Now, that probably has a lot to do with the FASD, but again, not realizing it at the time, I just always figured that I was not cut out to be friends with people. So I didn't have a lot of friends, and my life was more individualistic. I sort of was on my own a lot of times, which left me to discover life in weird ways. I was lucky enough to go to college. And what worked there was I was with a lot of people who were older than I was. And that actually, I fit in better with them than I did with my peers. And I got along a lot better with the older people. So I took broadcasting, and that brought me into a whole different realm because I took the on-air portion. I learned how to talk, how to write, how to produce. And my actual talents that they found were in a camera. I was a camera operator, which to me was fantastic. I love photography. It was a talent. So that talent carried me into a national broadcasting company that I worked for 10 years. And I eventually went to Europe and worked there. But I was an artiste. I was difficult to get along with. Things had to be done my way or no way at all. Nobody touched my equipment when I was off shift. They were afraid to touch it because it had to be exactly the way I left it when I came back. If there were bulbs missing or mic cords were not properly wrapped, oh boy, someone was going to hear about it. But because of my talent, I was able to do that. I can't think of another job I would have had that would have given me the leeway to be such a jerk to other people.
There's a lot of leeway in the world of filmmaking and broadcast and creative arts.
Yes, especially if you're good at your job. And people knew that, if you needed a shot, I was a hard news photographer and eventually became a hard news videographer, which included the on-air portion also. But the police knew me. Everybody knew me that, I was there. I had a job to do, very professional, but I always got the job done.
came from?
So yeah,
Was the diagnosis helpful to apply the strategy so that you could give yourself a little grace?
well, now I can understand why things would bother me so much. I mean, what's the big deal about rewrapping a mic cord? Well, if you're, in a hard news story and you're on the run and you go pull up your mic cord and it's this spider web, instead of smoothly throwing it out there and handing it to the reporter, I was able to understand that when things are concrete, the way they're supposed to be, and I can anticipate what's going to happen, I work a lot better. But I was finding that constant changes and things were really, really difficult. And that was probably based on the FASD.
Sure.
I'm really bad at generalizing. I have a perfect example. If I go to stay at someone's house and they say, oh, there are cookies in the counter, help yourself, I will not think to grab at any other time something else out of the cupboard ever again. I only had permission to take the cookies. So a couple of days later, they're like, well, did you eat anything? No, why not? Well, I don't know. And it turns out I have not understood that I can go into the pantry or whatever and grab the food if I want it because that permission has been given. But in my mind, only the cookie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have a hard time taking, say, a permission in one area and understanding when it applies more generally, other than when it's been specifically stated.
So bless my son's heart, he's struggles with, all right, if I did something wrong on the internet that doesn't apply to social media, how would you help him in that?
Mm-hmm.
And so helping him understand, yes, they are very different, but they have the same problems or have the same access.
Mm-hmm.
How would you word that so that he might understand it? Because I can generalize, right? And, if you're going to do it there, you're going to do it there.
That's probably going to be a long conversation, and you're probably going to go step by step, and the different access points, each of them individually, is what I would do if I was talking to another person on the spectrum. So we could look at each example, which would then hopefully encourage them to say, well, what about WhatsApp? Or what about the dark web? And if you can explore all these different areas and answer all the questions, that would probably help.
Okay. Well, that's good, because concrete thinking it's hard to imagine how, when you're in the spectrum, that's the same as what I just explained earlier. So that's good to know, because we do want to help, and he does want help.
Mm.
And so, but he at the same time just turned 18, and all my friends are on the internet, and bless his heart.
Thank you, RJ. That was awesome. I think a couple things that came out for me was the generalization part, but also there was a word that was used that was very interesting. RJ used the word talents versus strengths. Now think about that. Strengths means, right? Talents means what gifts you have, what talents you have. Thanks, RJ. That was brilliant.
Thank you for taking time to watch these interviews. We hope they've been informative in your FASD understanding, and we also encourage you to visit the website embracemovement.org and explore some of the resources we have there, as well as to make a contribution towards the production of this important documentary. Until then, thank you.